Newcastle beat Arsenal 1-0 at home. Newcastle also beat Tottenham 2-1 at home and got a draw versus Manchester City at home this season. I tell you what, when it comes to big games, Eddie Howe knows what he is doing. And we're going to talk a lot about Newcastle in today's video and touch a little bit upon Arsenal in what we learned from the game. And I have to say, Newcastle worked incredibly hard. Why Newcastle won today was the athletic levels, the work rate of the players. Newcastle wanted it more. You could hear St James's Park from minute one. Every time Newcastle won a throw on, the fans were behind the team. The team could feel that. Newcastle had so much more energy about them, desire about them than Arsenal today, and that is why they won the game. There was some question marks, Longstaff in the midfield and not Tonali, but I think Eddie Howe got that spot on in the end. And the reason I'm going to say that is you cannot go toe-to-toe with Arsenal technically. I mean, Newcastle can't go toe-to-toe with Arsenal technically, but athletically they can. I did a video a year ago and I said Man City the best team technically in the league, followed by Arsenal. Newcastle the best team athletically. Because Newcastle can athletic, I guess if that's a word, all the top teams, they have the ability to sometimes, when their core players are fit, go toe-to-toe against those teams. And if you look at Arsenal, PSG is so much technically better than Arsenal, and Arsenal one of the best technical teams in the world, but PSG probably are the best technical team in the world. But Arsenal absolutely battered PSG in the Champions League because Arsenal could technically outmaneuver PSG. Sorry, not technically. Arsenal could athletically outmaneuver PSG. PSG were small technicians. Arsenal were physical. They had a lot of runners. And today we saw Newcastle sort of do that to Arsenal. The athletic levels of Newcastle. Sean Longstaff today, a player that's been heavily criticised, put in an absolute shift. And I actually think that Longstaff for Tonali in this one-off game makes sense because there's going to be a lot of off-the-ball work. Newcastle were going to let Arsenal, have the ball. And they were going to let Arsenal sort of do their thing. Arsenal had 63% possession. So even though Tonali's fantastic on the ball, you've got Lewis Hall, you've got Livramento, you've got fullbacks that are good on the ball, you've got Bruno Gimenez that are good on the ball. So having a player like Longstaff that's just a complete runner off the ball worked really well today. And I think that's where Newcastle won. It was just the athletic levels off the ball, the work rate from, Lewis Hall and Livramento were incredible. Charlinton puts in a shift, Bruno Gimenez, Sean Longstaff, the absolute shift from Newcastle today won them the game. And you have to give Eddie Howe credit to that. I know Eddie Howe's under a bit of pressure. I know Newcastle haven't had their best start to the season, but I also think he did not get a transfer window. It was a complete mess what happened with Newcastle. So I've always had a bit of leniency for Eddie Howe, despite Newcastle's poor start to the season, where, it wasn't awful, but they've been nowhere near their best. And you look at it here, Arsenal generated 0.0 XG on target versus Newcastle. Newcastle put in an absolute defensive shift, and there will be question marks around Arsenal's ability outside of set pieces to create. Is that because Odegaard is missing? We will speak about that. But Newcastle put in a defensive shift. They gave absolutely everything. The only thing I think this game lacked, if you want my honest opinion, was I don't think Newcastle created a whole load of chances. I don't think it was the most interesting game in the world. I think it was just Newcastle working their socks off, defending for their lives, and Arsenal just lacking that creative spark. It wasn't a game where Newcastle had loads of chances, but there was a couple of opportunities on the break where I thought that Newcastle were particularly dangerous. But if you look at Newcastle at home versus teams in North London, they've won their last, I think, 8 or 9 games, scoring 23 with 6 clean sheets and only conceding 5. Newcastle, they like to play a London team at home. And I tell you what, St James's Park is one of the last places I want to go, because even if Newcastle aren't at their best, when those big games come around, they set up, Eddie Howe sets up. He knows that Newcastle can outrun any team in the world. When it comes to running power, that's what I mean by athleticism athletically. Technically Man City, Arsenal, PSG are a level ahead of Newcastle. But when it comes to athleticism, you cannot beat Newcastle, and that's what Newcastle have. And I'm a Man United fan, and I always say the problem with Man United is we don't just lack technically, but we lack athletically. If you lack technically, but you've got athletes, you're fine. If you lack athletically, but you've got technicians, you could be fine to an extent. Obviously, you need a blend of both, but United were lacking both. And I think Newcastle do have some good technical players, as I said, the fullbacks, Bruno Gimenez, which were key today in terms of their retention. And I think, that was so important. Now, if we look at this overall, Premier League matches in which Arsenal had just 1 shot on target, 2 of which have come against Newcastle since the start of last season. The other one came against Bournemouth, but they did go down to 10 men quite early against Bournemouth as well. But Arsenal have not been at it in recent games. Their defence has been conceding goals. Odegaard's obviously been missing. And the thing about Arsenal is they have this thing where once they sort of have one bad result, they get a bit nervy. Then they have 2 or 3 bad results in a row. That happened sort of, I'm going to say December last year, and then they came back after the January break and pretty much won every game went on this insane thing. So I do think Arsenal can turn it around, because we've seen Arsenal every season under Arteta seem to go 3 or 4 games winless in the league. Everyone writes them off and then they just come back even stronger. I don't think Arsenal are out of this race. I think City are gettable. I think Liverpool could drop points. I think Brighton will be a tough game for them. But let's talk about Newcastle. Let's talk about Livramento and Lewis Hall, because wow, those guys were phenomenal. 21-year-old Livramento and 20-year-old Lewis Hall made 7 successful tackles combined against Arsenal. They were not successfully dribbled past by an Arsenal player and only conceded 1 foul between them. Newcastle are sorted when it comes to fullbacks. When it comes to the fullback pair, Newcastle are sorted. 21 years of age. Lewis Hall has come on leaps and bounds defensively. He's got to get an England call-up, because I love Luke Shaw, but he is always in the hospital. He's always injured. The guy cannot stay fit. Arsenal, they completed 7 tackles against Arsenal. They did not get dribbled past once. Saka, one of the best players in the league, did not get past Lewis Hall today and only conceded 1 foul. They were absolutely excellent. So we're going to talk about my man of the match. It could have been Livramento, but again, I'm going to give it to Lewis Hall, because I think the improvement I've seen in Lewis Hall is immense. 4 tackles, 1 interception, 2 block shots, 8 clearances, 1 clearance off the line, 0 times dribble pass, 4 out of 5 aerial duels won as well, which is really impressive, and 6 out of 9 ground duels won. What an excellent display, because in my opinion, Bukayo Saka probably been the best right winger in the Premier League this season, with Salah, 2 of the best wingers in the league this season. Bukayo Saka's pretty much got a goal contribution every Premier League game, bar today, and I think the one before that. Not the one before that, the one, I think it was at Bournemouth, or did he play in that game? Maybe he didn't play in that game. I think he's got a goal. I think this is his first Premier League game where he's not got a goal contribution, or maybe second this season. He's been monstrous, and Arsenal couldn't even really get a shot off on target. Lewis Hall was dealing with Saka so well. Arsenal's right-hand side causes problems. That's where Arsenal, I think, is stronger. And I thought Lewis Hall's reading of the game was good. I think Lewis Hall was a player that everyone knows how good he is on the ball. Technically, can invert in midfield, can do those 1-2s, can really help Newcastle in build up and playing out from the back. But there's always been question marks around Lewis Hall's defensive ability. And he's really come on this season. I think he's physically matured, defensively matured. His reading of the game, anticipation. He wasn't rushing any tackles. He was, marking his man well, dealing with the runners incredibly well. I thought he put in a really good shift. Saka could not get past him absolutely once. And I think Lewis Hall, and these are some notes that I wrote, it's just his maturity as a defender's coming on. His 1v1 positioning, his handling of those 1v1 situations, and situations in the box, and his movement and winning his duels has improved massively. I think Eddie Howe could have given him a few more minutes in his first season. I do believe that he could have done a better job than Dan Burn at left back in certain game states, but I think Eddie Howe was slowly easing him in, because there was some question marks around his defensive ability, how he got done. But today he's showing how he has matured defensively. He's always been skilled with the passing, the crossing, the technical abilities, the breaking the lines. When it comes to dribbling, ball carrying, crossing, getting up the pitch, there's always been a great left back there. His technical ability to keep the ball, play those 1-2s, break the lines, create, has been phenomenal, inverting in midfield, but it's always been off the ball the question marks were. And today he put in a shift, and I generally think England will be calling for him. I said, to be honest, with Luke Shaw injured, I would have taken Lewis Hall to the Euros, and I got a bit of stick for that, but I said I think he's England's next left back. I'd have taken him to the Euros, and I stick with that, and I think he should be called up for England, because today he was incredible. He's technically secure, he was defensively solid. I think he's earned a spot in the England squad. And I think Chelsea will massively regret letting him go, because I look at what Maresca would like in his left back, and Lewis Hall ticks all those boxes. And I think one thing I noticed as well, as Lewis Hall kept saying, because he won the Man of the Match award, he kept saying post-match, I was listening to the post-match interview, he was saying how he's improved massively defensively and how he's worked really hard to improve his defensive game. And we absolutely saw that today in Lewis Hall. General thoughts was Bruno Gimenez was very good. He's such a shit house though. But you know what? Bruno Gimenez, if he played for Man United, I'd love him. But if I was an Arsenal fan, I would not have liked him at all today. Livramento, Hall was good. I thought Gordon worked incredibly well. Yeah, I think there were some good performances, and I meant to put Longstaff in there as well. I don't know why I forgot to put Longstaff in there. I thought Longstaff put an absolute shift, but Livramento 1v1 defending was incredible. Gordon work rate, the cross was incredible, and I think Eddie Howe has a really good strategy for challenging top teams at home, which is using Newcastle's work rate, getting them fired up. And I think the fans played a part in Newcastle's win today in terms of getting them fired up. They didn't create a lot of chances. They just scored the 1 goal. It wasn't one of those most exciting games when you're a feet, but it was a shift. It was a tactical, properly tactically correct by Eddie Howe, and Newcastle should be very happy with themselves. I thought every block, tackle, throw in, you could hear the stadium get riled up from minute 1. The team was well and truly up for it today, and I think Newcastle's pressing was organised. They're running their movement. They had everything in them today, and I think the aggressive and physical play. Arsenal could not handle that. Arsenal maybe underestimated Newcastle is the way I would describe it. Newcastle were just quick to every second ball, bringing that intensity, and also when they had the ball, they looked comfortable on it. They looked very comfortable on the ball, very comfortable against the Arsenal press. And I looked at Arsenal, I thought players like Trossard was particularly poor. I think Arsenal really lacked the determination, and the set pieces weren't at it, and they lacked the creativity. And credits for Newcastle for that. And my other standout player was Livramento. 1 interception, 3 tackles, 4 out of 4 ground duels won, 2 out of 3 aerial duels won, 44 touches, made 2 key passes with 100% dribble success rate. I mean, he was just as good as Lewis Hall today. He was absolutely phenomenal. Martinelli did not have a sniff. It was a really good, again, defensive performance. Arsenal did not make any progress down the left-hand side. His athleticism, awareness, patience, positioning, and timing makes him an elite 1v1 defender. He's fast. He reads the game well. He's strong. It made it really difficult for Arsenal to beat him. I think his anticipation and reading and intelligence has gone up a level as well. And I think in 1v1 situations, Livramento looks incredibly difficult to beat if he'll be back in the England lineup. And I think I look at Newcastle's fullbacks and I look at Livramento and I look at Lewis Hall. And I think, yeah, that they're good options for the future. And I also just think that Martinelli had nothing, no room to create. And I think Martinelli's looked better for Arsenal. I looked at the confidence and composure in the 1v1s from Livramento. He did not look fearful at all. He knew that he could handle Martinelli. And I think the effort, the determination, the reading, his 1v1 ability was immense today. Going into Bruno Gimenez, probably one of those players that if he plays for your team, you love him. But if he doesn't play for your team, I can see why people don't like him. His ability to win fouls. Sometimes he was barely touched, but his ability to win fouls, it is top. You have to just appreciate it, like in terms of like, as long as he doesn't do that against Man United, you have to just say fair play. His ability and IQ to win those fouls and manipulate the defence is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but he's just one of those guys, isn't he? 100% dribbles completed, 100% tackles won, 28 passes completed, 11 out of 18 duels won, 8 ball recoveries, 2 shots. What a performance from him. And I said Longstaff was off the ball performance was relentless. I think Arsenal's athleticism to counter Newcastle's athleticism to counter Arsenal's technical strength worked well. I thought Bruno Gimenez, drawing the fouls, expert at getting fouls. Every time Arsenal, he had the ball, he just won a foul, and that was just breaking up Arsenal's momentum. It was causing them issues. I think he was very, very clever with that today. And I thought Newcastle, the fullbacks and the midfield was very calm at receiving the ball in any area on the half turn, doing so well to just retain the ball and make it difficult for Arsenal. I do apologise if we're getting a bit of lag here. I don't know what that is. Yeah, my Wi-Fi's having a meltdown, so I'm going to look to sum up the video really soon. But Anthony Gordon and Isak did incredibly well for the goal. There's 2 top players in there. I don't think we've seen them at their very best this season, but there's no doubt that Newcastle have 2 absolutely top-tier attackers. I think Anthony Gordon's pretty much got a goal and assist in every game against the top 6 side this season. And last season, it's ridiculous as well. And Arsenal, could Arsenal be out the title race? I might make a video to talk about Arsenal in more detail soon, but they have responded from setbacks before. It is early days, but they're now 8. They could be 8 points behind City if they win. They need to step up. Odegaard will be back. Maybe that's going to be a boost for Arsenal. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you for watching. Please hit the like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. Bye.